Welcome to the podcast hosted by timecamp.com on how to stay on top of your work.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast Stay on Top of Your Work. And today my guest is Daniel Burstein, Senior Director at MechLabs Institute. Hi Daniel, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. I'm really happy that you joined me here today.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. So I'd like to begin with asking you the question, how did it happen that you are in the place in which you are? Because I think every guest of this podcast has an interesting story. So I'd like to ask this question for the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career in advertising as a copywriter, and I was a copywriter at an ad agency. And then my career shifted somewhat, and I went into did consulting with big tech companies like IBM and VMware and BEA. And I did sales enablement and field marketing and internal communications and all these things. And then we were in like 2008, 2009, if you remember that. It was a really, really rough economy. And I remember seeing a job opening for a local company called Marketing Experiments. And I still remember the listing and the opening. It said, we have a 7-word mission statement that's simple but not easy to discover what really works in optimization. And it really just piqued my curiosity. And I ended up, coming out and interviewing with them, and they had a cool location right on the beach, right on the ocean here in Jacksonville and stuff. And that was 9 years ago, and I've been here ever since as I'm the senior director of marketing and content. And so really all my skills built up to this point from, the writing and advertising and field marketing and internal communications. Now I don't only do that here, write the content and stuff, but it's great. I get to teach other marketers what I've learned and, what we've learned here in the Institute. So.
That's great. So I'd like to ask you about marketing and some general aspects. And what do you think about its importance in business, especially about content writing?
Well, marketing is crucial to business because when you think about how, our entire economy is set up, it's a capitalist economy, right? And in capitalism, a fundamental principle of capitalism is choice, right? And so for a business to foster choice, there needs to essentially be marketing. And that's what marketing's sole role and function should be. And sometimes I think it can get a bad name, or people are a little confused by that. Sometimes we get a little caught up in so much of the technology, right? There's this great technology now. There's marketing automation, and there's this data and analytics and all of this stuff. But I think you can't lose sight of the big picture. And that's that marketing should help a customer make the best decision for them. Something we call customer first marketing here. We've done a lot of research on it. We've shown to be very effective by essentially making sure you're putting the customer's interests first. And customers can sense that subtle difference in your motivation, that you're not out to get them, essentially, that you're out to, educate them and show them. Now, obviously you want to put your brand and your products in a good light. But really what you're trying to foster is the difference in actual value, delivered value, you might call it, and perceived value. So, every product, every service that's on the market, it wouldn't be there if it didn't have some sort of actual value. The challenge is your customers don't know and understand that value until they actually become a customer, right? Until they purchase the product, until they use your service. And so what you're trying to do for them is close that gap and help them perceive the value that you offer. Again, in an honest, upfront way, letting them know who's a good customer for you and who's not, right? Because you can't best serve everyone. You have to understand what your unique value proposition is, who you can serve better than others, and who you can. And for those that you can serve better than others, tell them how you do it. For those you can't, let them know. Because if you don't, at the end of the day, you're just going to get unsatisfied customers. And in the era we live in, social media and all this, it's those unsatisfied customers are going to hurt you at the end of the day. Now, you also asked about content. And so content really, it plays such a powerful and fundamental role in what I just said for 2 reasons. One, it can really help serve your customer. So whatever you offer, you have to understand, well, like what is a free version of that or some free value that comes along with that. For things like software products or something like that are virtual to begin with, that makes a lot more sense. Well, you can have like a free trial. But even if, let's say your product is organic cauliflower, right? So you're not going to give away your organic kind of cauliflower. With your content, you can kind of show people, hey, what's the best way to use cauliflower? It's some great recipes, what's a great way to grow organic food of your own. So they can start becoming, your friends and fans and followers before they even purchase. And the important thing too, the second thing that really does is it closes that gap of perceived value that I mentioned earlier. So again, if you're that organic cauliflower grower, you're probably doing all of these things, to grow your cauliflower really well that aren't necessarily evident to a customer if they're just walking in the store, right? They don't know that maybe you spend more money to get, to hand pick weeds instead of using, dangerous pesticides or something like that. But you can help tell the story by showing beautiful pictures of your farm, and you can introduce them to the farmers, and you can show them the beautiful stream just down the road from your farm that you're trying to keep clean. And so content can really help close that gap for customers and help them perceive the value that you're offering.
Yeah, and that's really interesting what you're talking about, because in contemporary times, I think many people who are content writers actually don't look at closing that gap, but they perceive content writing as a tool just to promote somehow the product, the software, whatever. What do you think about such approach? Is it good or not really?
Well, let me ask you, Kate, what do you like better? Do you like being served or do you like being sold to? What do you prefer?
I prefer being served. Yeah,
me too. Don't we all, right? So sure. It's this really weird thing that we all do, and I've been guilty of it, and I've certainly worked with a lot of marketing departments that have, is that we live in these two worlds, right? So like when we live as a consumer, when we live as a customer of anything, we have certain expectations and certain things we would like and certain things we want from companies, and when they don't offer it, we don't do business with them. But then when we put our marketing hat on and we live inside this brand, we have this huge blind spot, and we just see how important our products and services are, and how they're great, and how they're the best in the world. So I remember when I was starting to work with this startup, and they told me before I came on board, they said, okay, we're excited to have you be a consultant with us and join us, but you have to understand this one thing, that it was a technology security product, that we're the best technology security product ever, and we're going to change the world, and all this stuff. And I said, really, I would do a horrible job in marketing for you if I thought that. I have to think, who the heck cares about your brand or product? Because that's what all the customers are thinking, right? Nobody's randomly hearing about this product and thinking they're the best ever. They're thinking about it and saying, I don't care, there's 100 others, why should I care? And so that's why it's really important with your content that you're actually serving others, you're actually serving those customers. Over time, you're going to build trust with them. They're going to want to share your content with others. They're going to want to get to know your brand better. And as you draw them in, there's certain areas and places where you want to get a micro yes, where you want to have them take a next level of value with you. That would be a promotion, that would be a purchase or something like that. But from the outset, you have to win that trust first before they're going to want to do anything with you.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. So let's switch to content writing as a job, let's say.
Sure.
So how to be a good content writer, how to create, good, valuable like blog posts or any content for a website. Do you have any tips on that, maybe?
Oh, how long do we have? I could talk about that forever. It's something I'm very passionate about, something I do every day. So I think, so the first thing, we talked about, one, like, it just helps to be a curious person. I mean, it really does. If you want to go into content writing, it helps to be curious. I've written about all sorts of things in my career, from, complex Gorpy software to luxury real estate to psychology to all different things, and precious metals and all sorts of weird things that I never thought I would know or learn about. But kind of by having that curious nature, asking a lot of questions, and really wanting to learn about it myself, then I think that comes out in your writing. You learn the important things, and you're able to teach others. If you're not curious, if you're not interested in people and what they do, if you're not interested in how things and companies work, it's probably not a good fit for you. But the way to create good content, the way to be a good content writer, I mean, the number one thing is to understand your audience. And it goes back to what I said about serving them. And so a few of the ways to do that, when I started my career, the internet wasn't what it was today. I mean, it was starting out, but it wasn't what it was today. And I'm amazed now about how much information you can get about your customers without even interacting with them. If you have the opportunity, it's great to interact with them. I mean, there are times when I've got to sit down for like 20 hours and interview different customers and principals in a company and really get to know them. And then that really helps you understand them. What are their pain points? What are their goals? What words do they use to describe things? Because sometimes the words that people use to describe things are very different than the company speak or the industry speak. And that helps a lot, for example, for SEO. But it also helps them understand that you're speaking their language. But aside from being able to actually interview and interact with them one-on-one or people in the company, there's so many other ways you can learn about them digitally. You can go for consumers. There's a lot of consumer review sites. There's the Yelps of the world, Google reviews, Facebook, social media, and just try to see how they're talking about things. See what value they find in your company. See what they don't value in your company. And then you can help write to that. Even for B2B companies and B2B industries, there's a lot of industry forums. There's podcasts. There's all these things. Each industry and each kind of consumer niche, it speaks its own language, and it really helps to understand what matters to those people to speak that language, and to be able to, because they'll know when they're talking to someone who really cares about something and when they're not. When you're really just faking it with their language. Another key thing that's really powerful digitally is getting involved in testing, like A/B testing or something like that, and just testing. It's great through email. You can just test different subject lines, test copy of email, test headlines, test all these different things, and so you kind of build your theory by what you're looking at from customers on the front end, by all this kind of research you're doing. But then you can kind of close that gap of what really works with testing.
Okay, these are good tips actually, and I'd like to talk a little bit about marketing. Do you have maybe any marketing tips for people who are new to the business of content writing? Is there any way to connect these two aspects, marketing and content writing?
You mean to market your own content writing, or to use content writing to market different brands and different products?
Both, actually, because they are both interesting topics.
Yeah, so I think if you're marketing your own content writing, it comes down to just being able to, I think the proof is in the pudding a lot, being able to show the work you can do, your portfolio, your website, your social media, whatever you have. I interview a lot of writers in my job, that we hire. And it's amazing how many people say they can do these great things, that they say they're great, but they're unable to show it, right? I mean, that's the basis of being a good content writer, being able to show what you can really do. So if you're just starting out and you don't have a big portfolio, you don't have a lot of experience, I recommend just get right. I mean, find nonprofit clients you can write for just to have some experience, or just start your own blog, start your own website. I mean, when I was starting out, if you really wanted to be able to write something and get it published, you had to go through industry gatekeepers. It was really exciting to be able to get a job in a newspaper to get some writing done, or be able to work with clients just to get some pieces in your book. But an exciting thing that's going on now is that there are no gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are gone. You could launch your own blog tomorrow. So it just always surprises me when I see people who say, I want to be a writer, I want to be a content writer, but yet they haven't really done it much, when there's nothing stopping them from getting out there, blogging, writing something, and showing that to others. And then when you do that too, you can install analytics, you can see how much traffic you're getting, you can really learn how the whole process works. In terms of using, content writing in marketing, I think, like I said, it goes back to a lot of what I said is the whole goal is to make sure that your customers understand their perceived value. And at Mech Labs, we actually have something called the Mech Labs conversion heuristic. And it sounds a bit like a formula, but it walks through the different steps that you need to understand in order to increase the probability of conversion, in order to increase the probability that someone acts. We have a whole graduate level course about it, but I'll go through it just very briefly on the podcast, just in the simplest terms, into some of the factors. So one is motivation, right? So as I said, understand your customers, understand their motivations, because the most powerful thing that is going to lead to someone wanting to convert is tapping into their motivations, right? So you can get a fish to swim upstream. I mean, if a fish is strong up, they're going to swim against the currents and they'll do whatever. But you know what? It's going to be much easier to swim downstream, and it's going to be much easier to go with your customers and tap into what they naturally want to do. Another element is the clarity of the value proposition. So like I said, making sure that perceived value is clear. And a really important thing is understanding what is the differentiation, right? If I am your ideal customer, why should I buy from you instead of any other company, right? What is that ideal point of differentiation? What makes it different from anything else? And why should I believe it? Where's the credibility there, right? All of our products are going to say, hey, they're the best in the world, they're awesome, but show me some credibility so I truly understand it. Another element is incentive. So this is an element that can be often abused by content writers and by marketers. You see if there's not a real value proposition there, it's not really serving their customers, and they just abuse incentive. They say it's 50% off. It's, here in America, the car companies, I think they might still do it. They used to like pay people to buy their cars. It's like, get the new Chevy here, $5,000 cash back. Well, it's not a really sustainable business practice. So they used to like to call incentive the bacon of marketing tactics. Because if you're not a good cook, even if you just have a plain kale salad, if you throw bacon into anything, it'll taste better. And so that's what marketers, writers sometimes do. They just try to throw an incentive onto things. So those are some of the positive elements that to get people to more likely to act, but there are also some negative elements that get people less likely to act. One of those is anxiety. So think what you can do to reduce their anxiety. So if they see one of those headlines of, 47 surprising things, you'll never believe what happens next, are they going to click? Maybe they click because of curiosity, or maybe they've been burned enough that, they don't trust you anymore. And another element is friction. So friction is that, make it easy for them to consume your content. Make sure it works well on mobile, especially with writing. Don't put these big blocks of copy in your writing, 4-line paragraphs tops, have a lot of white space in there, have bolding, have subheads, have bullets. A lot of people, especially reading online, they're scanning a lot. So you want to reduce that friction, make it very easy for them to, easily read, not show this big block of text that's undifferentiated that, that seems very intimidating.
But I've actually heard or read a post, which was actually pretty long, which said that the longer the post is, the better. Do you think it's true? Or it's better to actually create something that it's short but has a real value?
Oh, yeah. So I'm not saying make it short. I totally agree with that. My point is, it's how you display it that can have a lot of friction or a little bit of friction. So think about a post where it's all just one big block of gray text, right? Or think about a post where there's subheads, where there's short paragraphs, where there's white space, where there's bullets, where there's imagery that helps you understand it. So it could be the same exact amount of words, but the way you display it and the way you help people understand it could be totally different. Because that type of post, you can scan, you can get pulled in 2/3 of the way down because you see a bolded headline that's really interesting to you. Because as for length, we've seen some, long copy do very well, surprisingly well. People think, like you said, people think, hey, it's short copy, no one has time. Well, the truth is, people read what they care about and what matters to them. And so it's just micro conversions. If you have a good headline, it's going to pull people into that first paragraph. If that's a good first paragraph, you're going to keep pulling people down and they're going to want to keep reading. So they read what's good, they read what's interesting to them, and then they're more likely to convert if they read something that long.
And do you think it's more important to pay attention to SEO or to a good content?
So, if you listen to the search engines like Google, I would say, and I'm not, by far, I'm not an expert in SEO, they say that you should pay attention to good content. They say, we're going to figure everything else out. The rules are going to constantly change, so you can't keep up with them. We're going to figure everything else out. Truly serve your customers, truly create good content. We're going to find a way to drive traffic to them. And if you do, those other things are going to tend to follow. People are going to want to link to your content, right? All of those behaviors, they're going to click through. When they see it in the search engine, they're going to read, they're not going to bounce. All those behaviors that Google and the search engines are actually looking for. So I think when it comes to SEO, there are some technical fundamentals that it's important to understand that you don't want to inadvertently shoot yourself in the foot. So definitely do that. But don't work so hard on trying to rig the system. The system pretty much works. Work within the system and create good content.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you, what challenges have you met in your work that were really difficult as a content writer, and how to maybe avoid them?
That's a good question. Well, I'll say
maybe there are no challenges. Maybe it's a simple work, and it's really cool to do that. I don't know.
No, it's it's definitely not simple. So I'd say one thing, the advice I was just giving. I mean, when I started out writing in print, and so writing in print, I was definitely less conscious of the customer's eye path in digital, how likely they are to skim and scan things, and how quickly they'll bounce. And so I focused a lot more on the writing than on the actual layout of the writing. But since then, I've understood how important that layout is and how important it is to be able to, pull people through what you're doing. So that's definitely important. I think another thing I learned is the importance of the way you highlight others in your writing. So, now with thanks to social media and some of ways of sharing, it's really good to get others involved with what you're doing, because then you're ultimately opening it up to their audience as well. So finding the right influencers to engage with your content. Now there's a flip side to that is the place we're in is there's likely more people who want to engage and do things with you than you have the time for. So it's also finding the right partnerships. One thing I definitely mistake I made, because a lot of writing with any community should be collaborative. You should find like-minded communities. You should try to do things together. So if it's someone you really trust and are willing to introduce your audience to, and they trust you, that it's good for both of you sharing that audience. And I definitely got in the past blinded by big name brands and well-respected brands. And so we tried to start these big overarching partnerships with them, that they're unable to execute on them. And so any partnership you're going into like that, it helps to really start small. Just start small trust building measures. Then you get to know them better and you get to see that it's a good mutual fit. Sometimes it's not a good fit because frankly, they can't execute. They don't come through on something. They do a bad job, or hopefully it's not on our side that we're not executing right. But sometimes it's not a good fit because it's just not a good fit. We have certain ways that we deal with our audience. As I said, we try to really not be promotional. We try to, to serve first, to give a lot more before we ask. And different communities just have different ways of dealing with their audience, and different audiences are used to different things. And so just making sure that you're finding, a like-minded fit, you're of the same thought of how you're going to deal with your audience, or, it could go awry. And frankly, you can just waste a lot of time on those partnerships that don't work out well.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you a more creative question now.
Oh, I love this.
What inspires you in your work? Because I guess you have quite challenging work when it comes to creating. So what source of inspiration, where do you find your inspiration?
So I think there's two things. I mean, one is staying intimate and close to your audience through social, but especially through email. A lot of the content we send out is kind of through more of a letter style, and we encourage people to write back to us, and they do. And so hearing from our audience, how we help them, how we help their career, how we serve them, how we excited them. I mean, sometimes how we fall flat too. But that really inspires me. It's great. And even when we fall flat, since we are essentially writing about marketing and marketing to marketers, it's a very high bar. You know what I mean? It's not like we're marketing to plumbers where they don't care. They care about plumbing. And we're marketing to marketers. So there's a lot of time where they'll call us out for this or that. And so I learn a lot from our audience too, and it helps us improve. So that inspires me. The other thing that inspires me is just seeing, content created in different industries. So for example, the New York Times, super respect the New York Times. The reporting they do is amazing. I mean, all the content, even the stuff that's not investigative reporting, is amazing. And so I try to read that. I try to read a lot of newspapers and magazines, even outside our industry, that I think are really good and really quality, because it inspires me to want to bring that into the marketing industry. We'll never be, the New York Times or the Consumer Reports of marketing. I would love to be at that level. We'll never realistically be at that level, but it's definitely something to aspire to see the good work that they do.
Okay, so I have one last question to you,
Sure.
which relates to the name of the podcast, Stay on Top of Your Work. How do you stay on top of your work?
Wow, it's not always easy. So this is probably not the best time management tool, admittedly, but one thing I use is just my Outlook inbox. So I keep all of my to-dos in my inbox, and I don't get to move and file those emails into another folder until I've completed it. So it's almost this little reward when you complete something to get to move that email out of your inbox. Because I hate having a big inbox, but I tend to because I'm keeping everything I want to do there. So just have that little reward. Sometimes it's a small thing. You just have to reply to an email. Again, sometimes it's one of our audience members writing in with a question. It's a pretty simple thing. You write back, have a question. That's a small thing. Sometimes it's a big piece. It's a whole big article or, something I need to write. And but it stays in my inbox, and I open it and I see it every day, and I can't move it until I actually do it. So it's a nice little reward of getting to have a inbox.
Okay, that sounds good, actually. Thank you, Dan, for coming here to my podcast. It was my pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoyed it.
This podcast was brought to you by Timecam. You can listen to it on iTunes and SoundCloud. Subscribe to get more content and always stay on top of your work.